Tyrann Mathieu's father says his son won't seek to play football or return as a student at LSU this fall.
For Tyrann Mathieu, this is a letdown. He attended rehab, was attempting to rejoin the team.
In 2013, the Cardinals drafted Tyrann Mathieu in the 3rd round despite character concerns that scared off every other team. He had been kicked off LSU's team for failed drug tests, and his draft stock had cratered from 1st round all the way to the late 3rd.
The HoneyBadger, the star cornerback for LSU, not expected to continue to be a LSU Tiger.
Instead, Mathieu's father tells WVUE-TV in New Orleans that his son will instead remain at a drug rehab center in Houston, where he's been since Monday.
Even after being a Heisman finalist in 2011 as a defensive back. But the Cardinals saw something else in him, and they would eventually sign him to a contract that made him the highest paid safety in NFL history. What nobody expected was how he would use that opportunity that he got for the Cardinals to turn into one of the best safeties in the modern NFL. His story is truly inspiring, and it starts all the way back when he got his nickname, the HoneyBadger. In 2011, Tyrann Mathieu burst onto the college football field with a nickname that stuck like glue. People called him the HoneyBadger, and it was a perfect description of how he played. He wasn't the biggest player on the field, listed at just 5'9" and maybe 185 pounds soaking wet, but he played like he had nothing to lose and everything to prove. He flew around the field with this fearless, relentless style that made his presence always felt. Every time the ball was snapped, he was somewhere near it, causing chaos for opposing offenses. LSU was coming off a Cotton Bowl winning season in 2010. They had reloaded with one of the most talented defenses in college football. Tyrann was supposed to be a complementary piece, a playmaker who could make things happen in the secondary. Instead, he became the heart of that defense. His instincts were off the charts. He could read a play before it developed. He could close on the ball carrier faster than anyone expected. And he had this uncanny ability to be exactly where he needed to be at exactly the right moment. Opposing quarterbacks learned quickly that throwing anywhere near the HoneyBadger was a dangerous proposition. That season at LSU, Mathieu finished with 77 tackles, 6 forced fumbles, 5 fumble recoveries, and 2 interceptions. He returned 2 punts for touchdowns too, and he was always around the ball. His play was so special that he won the Chuck Bednarik Award as the best defensive player in college football, finished 5th in Heisman voting, and was a consensus All-American and the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. The guy was special, and everyone knew it. NFL scouts were already circling, already talking about him as a future 1st-round pick. The talent was undeniable and the ceiling seemed limitless. But there's another side to the HoneyBadger story that nobody was talking about publicly yet. In October 2011, Mathieu got suspended for 1 game after violating LSU's drug policy. One mistake, one slip-up, and they sat him down for a week. People figured that was it, that he'd learned his lesson and would move forward clean. The coaching staff kept it quiet, and everyone thought, hey, maybe it's behind us. That was the expectation anyway, but it wasn't. On August 10, 2012, just before the 2012 season was supposed to start, LSU kicked him off the team. The official statement said it was a violation of team rules, but everybody knew what it really meant. He'd failed more drug tests, probably multiple times. Now the Heisman finalist was suddenly unemployed in college football. LSU's championship hopes took a massive hit with them. They had been favorites to win it all that season, and suddenly their defense had a massive hole right in the middle of it. The fallout was ugly. Tyrann withdrew from school and entered drug rehab in Houston, trying to get his life back on track. Then in October 2012, he got arrested along with 3 other former LSU players for marijuana possession. The off-field issues were piling up faster than anyone could deal with, and the NFL future that had seemed so bright was suddenly in serious jeopardy. By November 2012, he declared for the NFL draft, abandoning any thought of returning to college. By February 2013, he was at the NFL Combine, running a 4.5 40-yard dash that was solid but not spectacular. NFL teams wanted to know about his drug issues though, and he met with 11 or 12 teams at the Combine trying to convince them that he had turned a corner. The interviews were grueling. Teams wanted to know if he'd stay clean once he got paid. They wanted to know if he was serious about football or if he was going to flame out the second something got hard. The questions were fair and they were definitely necessary. Nobody wanted to invest a high draft pick in a player who might not make it through his rookie season because of choices he was making off the field. Then came the actual draft day. When draft day arrived, he had been told by multiple teams that he might be taken in the late 1st round, so he flew all the way to New York in preparation to hear his name being called. He sat in Radio City Music Hall watching the 1st round come and go, waiting for his moment, but it came and went without his name being called. Then the 2nd round passed, and still nothing. He flew back to New Orleans to wait it out, and the sting of that 1st round whiff was brutal, hurting every time another defensive back got drafted ahead of him. When the 3rd round finally came, 68 other players had already been drafted, and 15 of those were defensive backs. Teams looked at his talent and then looked at his character concerns, and they decided the talent wasn't worth the risk. A player who should have been a first-round pick ended up falling all the way to the 3rd round, and the reasons were all his fault. The Arizona Cardinals were the one who finally took a chance on him. GM Steve Keim and coach Bruce Arians did their homework, and they made the selection at pick 69. They had spent significant time leading up to the draft with him, getting to know the person behind the player. They had watched the tape and seen someone who was passionate about the game, someone who loved football more than anything. Keim believed that if you had a guy that was as passionate about the game as he was, you had a chance to steer him down the right road. The decision was all but automatic once Mathieu lasted that long, and they signed him to a 4-year, $3 million deal. When his name was finally called, the emotion hit him like a wave, and relief washed over him because everything from that past year, getting arrested, getting kicked out of school, going through the whole draft process and the questions, trying to be yourself, it was tough. He was just happy to get through it, and he cried that night in a New Orleans restaurant called Happy's Irish Pub, surrounded by friends and family. Everything he'd been through had led to that moment, and he wasn't going to let it waste. The story could have ended there, a talented player who couldn't get out of his own way, who threw away his chance at greatness because he couldn't stay clean. That was a cautionary tale everyone expected, and it would have been an easy one to tell. But that was only the beginning. What the Cardinals saw that other teams refused to acknowledge was something worth taking a risk on, and in Arizona, he would get his chance to prove every team wrong for passing on him. HoneyBadger showed up to training camp from day one competing for playing time. He was going up against veterans like Rashad Johnson and Jeremiah Bell for the starting free safety job, and he also had to prove he could handle the nickelback role in their sub packages. The coaches named him the backup free safety to start the season, but that lasted about 5 minutes. He worked his way into the lineup quickly, and by the first game of his rookie season, he was already making plays that made people sit up and take notice. Everyone could see the instincts, the nose for the ball, the way he flew around the field like the HoneyBadger of old. He was causing turnovers while making tackles and keeping plays in front of him. Opposing quarterbacks started to learn quickly that they couldn't throw anywhere near him. The Cardinals defense was built around Patrick Peterson on the outside, but Mathieu was the guy who made everything work in the middle of the field. He was a guy who was always in the right spot, always making a play that stopped the drive from continuing. Then in December 2013, his rookie season ended abruptly. He tore his ACL and LCL, the kind of injury that can end a career or at least sideline a player for a year. It happened in practice, which somehow made it worse. He was having the kind of season that was putting him in the Defensive Rookie of the Year conversation, and suddenly, it was over. It was a brutal way to end what had been a promising start, and plenty of people figured that would be the end of his story. But he spent the offseason grinding through rehab, and he was back for training camp for the next year, showing no signs of slowing down. Even missing those final games, the film spoke for itself. He was in the conversation for Defensive Rookie of the Year like we had mentioned, despite only playing 12 games that season, and he had made the all-rookie team. The ACL hadn't diminished his instincts or his feel for the game. The medical staff had done their job, and Mathieu had done his. Now he was about to go show his first true peak in the league. When 2014 came, Mathieu came back even stronger, making plays all over the field and not missing any time during that season. The Cardinals defense was getting better around him, and he was becoming a leader in that locker room. Players started looking at him differently. He wasn't just a talented rookie with the character concerns anymore. He was someone they could count on by taking the job seriously. The maturity that had been questioned at LSU was nowhere to be found in Arizona. He was a professional in every sense of the word, and his teammates took notice. Then in 2015, he had the best season of his career, making plays everywhere, creating turnovers at an incredible rate, and earning a team captain nod alongside kicker Chandler Catanzaro. That was significant. The same player who'd gotten kicked out of LSU's team for maturity issues was now being voted a captain by his peers in the NFL. He was earning their respect through his work ethic and his play, and he was becoming one of the best leaders on that defense. When you're a captain in the NFL, it means something different than in college. It means that everybody's looking at you to set the tone every single day, and Tyrann was finally doing that. But fate had other plans. In December 2015, while having the best season of his career, he tore his other ACL. 2 ACL tears in 2 calendar years, and yet he had already made the All-Pro first team that season before he went down. The injury was devastating, but the performance couldn't be denied. He had proven he was one of the best safeties in football even when his body was actively working against him. After missing most of the 2016 offseason recovering, he was back and better than ever. In August 2016, just before the season started, the Cardinals made him the highest paid safety in the NFL. His new contract was a 5-year, $70 million deal, and it was a massive reward for everything he had overcome. His teammates voted him the most valuable player on the defense in 2017, even while playing through injuries that would have sidelined most players, and the maturity that had been questioned for years was completely gone. He was a leader in that locker room, someone who helped young players learn how to be professionals, and someone who made the defense better just by being on the field. That honeymoon phase, unfortunately though, wouldn't last long. But before we get into the second half of his career, if you like this content, I'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button. It lets YouTube know that you want to see more things like this. So let's get back into it. The tensions would soon rise. The Cardinals wanted Tyrann to take a pay cut going into the 2018 season, but he refused, and so they released him. He would then sign a one-year $7 million prove-it deal with the Houston Texans to start the 2018 season. He had to show he could still play at a high level after everything he had been through, and he did exactly that. The Texans used him as a Swiss Army knife, lining him up at safety, slot corner, and even at linebacker depending on the week. He was everywhere and he was effective. Defensive coordinators could move him around and know that he would make plays regardless of where he lined up. That kind of versatility was rare, and it made the entire defense more difficult to game plan against. He finished that season with 89 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 8 pass deflections, along with being named a captain in Houston just like he had been in Arizona. When you have a player with his talent and his work ethic, and he's also someone who's helping guys get better, that's the kind of player you want in the locker room. The one-year contract was his way of proving he was still an elite player, and the Texans got exactly what they were looking for. He had proven that the ACL injuries hadn't taken anything away from his instincts or his ability to make plays. That's exactly why the team that had just lost in the AFC Championship came calling with a contract that would change everything for him. In 2019, the Kansas City Chiefs signed Mathieu to a 3-year, $42 million deal. He instantly became a captain on that team that desperately needed him. In 2018, the Chiefs had the 31st ranked pass defense, with the addition of Mathieu and defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo that moved all the way up to 17th in year 1. He was playing both safety and linebacker depending on the formation, and he was the heartbeat of that defense from day one. Spags built game plans around what Mathieu can do, using his versatility to confuse opposing quarterbacks and create mismatches. His instincts and his ability to play multiple positions made him impossible to game plan against. The Chiefs had Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce leading the offense, and now they had a defensive leader who could match that energy and intensity on the other side of the ball. They made the Super Bowl that first season together, beating the 49ers and stamping him as a Super Bowl champ. They would make it back the following year, eventually falling to Tampa Bay in a game where Mathieu was everywhere trying to make plays. The Bucs offense was clicking that day, and he was the one who was trying to slow them down. In 2020, he was recognized as the top safety in the entire NFL by multiple outlets including CBS Sports, and he earned first-team All-Pro honors yet again, also making the 2010s All-Decade team. He had 62 tackles, a touchdown, and 6 interceptions that season while carrying that defense to the Super Bowl yet again. In 2021, he was named the Chiefs defensive captain for another consecutive year, and he continued to be one of the most respected players on that team. He was still playing multiple positions while being the guy who set the tone for that defense every single week. The Chiefs made another Super Bowl run that season, falling just short against the Bengals in a game that felt like it was there for the taking in the AFC Championship. That loss stung, but it didn't take away anything from what he had accomplished in Kansas City. Mathieu was a captain on that team for 3 seasons, and when he left Kansas City, he had left as one of the most respected players in the history of that franchise. Every team he played for made him captain, and he earned every single one of those leadership roles through his work and his dedication to his teammates. The HoneyBadger had come a long way from LSU, and the NFL had finally seen what the Cardinals saw in him all those years ago. But as much as Kansas City had become his home, there was one place that had always been calling him back, and the story wasn't finished yet. In 2022, Mathieu signed a 3-year, $33 million deal with his hometown state, New Orleans Saints. He was going home to New Orleans, where he grew up in the Central City neighborhood, where he was raised by his grandparents before getting adopted by his uncle and aunt after his grandfather passed away. He had first started playing football in the streets of his hometown, and he had gone to college at LSU just across the river at Baton Rouge. The NFL had taken him all over the country to Arizona, Houston, Kansas City, but now he was finally home again. It was a homecoming in every sense of the word, and the Saints made him a captain immediately. He was still effective, making plays and still being the kind of leader who made everyone around him better. He finished that season with 91 tackles, with 3 interceptions, and was playing meaningful snaps in a defense that was trying to build something special around him. He was supposed to be well past his prime by then, but the instincts hadn't faded, and he was playing at an elite level. Defensive coaches still had to account for him on every single snap, and in July 2024, just before training camp was set to start, Mathieu announced his retirement. 12 seasons in the NFL, 838 total tackles, 36 interceptions, 100 pass deflections, 11 sacks, and 3 first-team All-Pro selections. He had played for 4 different teams, and every single one of them had made him a captain. He won a Super Bowl, earned about $100 million in his career, and most importantly, he changed the story of who he was. The kid who got kicked out of LSU for failing drug tests became a veteran leader who taught young players how to be professionals, how to handle adversity, and how to grow from mistakes instead of being defined by them. He proved that your past doesn't have to define your future, and that the only label that matters is the one you earn through your actions. Looking back at his career, what stands out the most isn't the stats or the awards, though both were impressive. What stands out is the transformation in and of itself. He went from a player rested in college to a player who every team in the NFL wanted on their team. He went from a 3rd-round pick who nobody trusted to the highest paid safety in the NFL. The Cardinals took a chance on him in the 3rd round, and he turned that opportunity into a career that nobody could have predicted when he was sitting in that New Orleans restaurant crying because his draft weekend had gone so wrong. That's a real story of the HoneyBadger, and it's a story that proves anyone can turn their life around if they're willing to put in the work. So there you have it. Watch this next video if you haven't already, and subscribe if you're new. Thanks for watching.